The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. College football is down to the final two. Some crazy hirings as well. And then, of course, the NFL, a crazy, tragic, to some degree, week. But we still got to figure out what's going to happen in the playoffs. So we'll talk about that today as well. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up in me?
Welcome in to an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast. I'm your host, Vince Stover. I'm joined by my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Boy, winding down here in the old football season.
We sure are, and I'm excited to talk to you about it. We have not had a chance to talk a whole lot yet about what happened this weekend. Typically, we'll talk on the phone, but we've both been busy this week. So looking forward to kind of chatting about what all went on down with the NFL stuff this weekend. Before we get to that, though, I want to talk college football first today, as we are down to the final two teams in the NCAA championship. And I can say that things did not go the way that I thought they would go this weekend. I thought it would be Michigan and Georgia, but I thought Georgia would even look a little better than it did. So let's start with Michigan and TCU. TCU basically controlled that game. What were your thoughts on that game and how it all played out?
No, like I said, it was a surprise. I think it was good. Good for college football. I think these playoffs worked out well. I think it is interesting to think about, expanding it. Boy, what that could have been this year with all the teams. Would have been quite the competition. I don't know who would have came out of it here, but I think with the four teams they had, this was probably better than it's been maybe in some of the other years for sure. TCU, played well. Obviously, has coached well. I guess what's his first year at TCU. He's been around a while, but they played well. They stayed right in there, and a lot of people would say they won't really have a chance in the national championship game, but I don't think most people thought they'd have a chance, with undefeated Michigan, maybe either. So they have played well and can score. So I think it was good, and I think could be an interesting game on next Monday night.
That's the thing, right? Is it could be. Most people would say it probably isn't going to be. Which might, I don't know. I think people will tune in to see what TCU looks like. And if Georgia gets up early, then maybe they will, go a different direction, turn the channel and go somewhere else as well. But when I'm looking at it here, first of all, Michigan ended up making it a ball game, right? They closed it out, had a chance there towards the end to come back. They did come back a lot as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how TCU comes out against Michigan. The question I have, though, is again, Georgia only won by a point. Ohio State missed the field goal, 50-yard field goal. Not an easy field goal, but he didn't even come close to hitting it. But I don't know. I go into it thinking, man, TCU had a chance to beat Michigan, I thought, but I don't see them having a chance to beat Georgia. Now, granted, that's why they play the game. You never know. Let's talk about that Georgia-Ohio State game, an incredibly exciting game. Came down to the very last seconds of the new year. What a way to close out the year. Ohio State with a huge opportunity, played some really good football. I've got some comments on C.J. Stroud, but I'll save those for just a second. Overall thoughts, Ohio State, Georgia.
Ohio State, played well. I thought they could give them a game. I thought it was, very, very good game for them. I thought maybe they were going to win that. So, but Georgia, held on and was able to there at the end, actually kind of came back. But I thought Ohio State played a really good game. And Georgia ended up beating a really good team.
They did. A lot of people have been promoting Will Levis from Kentucky as a quarterback that could be the number one quarterback, could be the number two quarterback. And I've said from the get-go, this is Bryce Young 1, CJ Stroud 2. The way CJ Stroud played in that game, I think he solidified himself as a top 2 quarterback, maybe possibly even into that number 1 conversation. He's got the better size than Bryce Young, although I think Bryce Young should go before him. I think it's crazy if anybody thinks that there should be another quarterback above CJ Stroud and Bryce Young in this draft. To me, it's clear cut. Those are number 1, number 2 quarterbacks. Because you look at winning along with the talent. Will Levis has great arm, but he hasn't proven that he can win football games. He didn't do it at Penn State. He didn't do it at Kentucky. And to the degree, especially, that Bryce Young and CJ Stroud has had. And you could argue it's the talent and all that kind of stuff. I don't care. You got to be able to produce. He didn't produce, not the same way. So I think CJ Stroud, to me, solidified his spot as a top 2 quarterback in this NFL draft. Any thoughts on that aspect?
I think C.J. Stroud definitely, looked good in here and showed that. Again, I think when we talk about the draft, we've got a lot of time between now and then, and you'll have the combine. You'll have other things that come up. People go up and down, and depending on what a team is looking for in a quarterback too. But I sure think C.J. Stroud could definitely be a good one.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Did TCU end Jim Harbaugh's college coaching career?
Yes, I would think it sure sounds like it has. It seemed like he's interested in the pro game, and I think if he was going to leave, this would be a good time to do it. I mean, he got him in the Final Four. He got him there. He definitely improved things at Michigan. He, beat Ohio State twice. He stays there another 3 or 4 years. What's it going to be? So if he wants to move, now's probably the ideal time from there.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago, I've heard that mentioned, even though they just hired a coach last year. But I've heard that. Indianapolis, again, someplace he has ties to. Carolina supposedly has reached out to him as well, which could be his agent just telling people, trying to drive the price up. Who knows? I mean, he's been in the NFL. He had success there in San Francisco. I don't know. I see it from his angle, why he wants to be a pro coach. I'm not sure that if I'm an owner, I want that personality on my team as the leader of my team at the very least, especially in the day and age of everybody going younger, more player friendly. That's not Jim Harbaugh. So I don't know. We'll see if he gets a job. The report is if he gets offered a job, he's taking it. I mean, that's an interesting report, right? That sounds like he's working against himself in that situation. But as far as it goes at Michigan, I mean, could he take the program any further? Sure, he could win a national championship or even make it to the championship game. But I think for all intents and purposes, he took Michigan where they were going to go to. And with USC coming into the division, into the conference, it makes the conference even harder to get back to that spot. So I think it makes sense as well. A good time for him to go back to the NFL if he chooses to do so. The NFL is an easier job, right? You don't have to recruit, especially with all the NIL stuff, all the transfer portal stuff. The NFL is just an easier job as a whole. I could see him wanting to get back to that as well. Speaking of coaches, Dad, Jimbo Fisher, it was reported he is hiring Bobby Petrino as his offensive coordinator at Texas A&M. Petrino has had legal issues. He's had moral issues. He's an interesting guy with an interesting background. And Texas A&M is a program that had a lot of promise and did not fulfill it. Top recruiting class, nothing to show for. A really bad year this last year. What does this hire do? I mean, Petrino knows football, but is he a guy you want at your university?
Yeah, it's not a guy I'd want at my university, and I think I'm a little surprised that, it doesn't seem like that would be the best hire right now. I don't know that it would help you in the recruiting stage a whole lot. I think it could hurt you there. Yeah, he knows football, but it's an interesting guy to bring into your program, and where Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M is now, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
I mean, now you got the next coach, right? When they fired Jimbo Fisher, Petrino now is going to step in as the interim coach. So interesting to say the least. Of course, Petrino had recently, like in December, got hired by UNLV. And now in January, first week of January, he moves on to Texas A&M. So interesting turn of events there for Bobby Petrino as well. I want to talk a little baseball real quick, Dad, because some news was made earlier today. We are doing this live program, by the way. Welcome all our live viewers on YouTube and Facebook, and all our listeners listening on podcasts, wherever you get your podcast as well. The Red Sox, it was originally announced he signed, Rafael Devers signed a 1-year contract. Then about an hour later, maybe that, 11 years, $331 million. The Red Sox lock up their guy after missing out on some free agents. They don't let him get out the door like they have let some previous guys leave. So a big signing there. Continues kind of the action of Major League Baseball right now. Little deals have gone on here and there. Eric Hosmer signed with the Cubs. The Brewers acquired a pitcher. The Orioles acquired a first baseman. The Nationals signed a first baseman. So little things here and there. But Rafael Devers that's a big deal. $331 million over 11 years. I get why you do it, but at the same time, 11 years is a really long time, and I'm not sure it's ever worked out for anybody. So is there any surprise to that, or were they at the point they had to sign him to a big deal?
I mean, that's kind of where it's going now. So that's what everybody has to do. I do agree with you. I mean, I don't know about this contracts being as long-term, are guys going to play that long, or will they be, productive that long? Doesn't seem like that'd be the way to do it. But again, you don't have as much moving around. There has been a lot of that lately. So maybe locking a guy up, it does give you a little bit of stability there. But yeah, it seemed like a lot of moves here and there. Baseball, I'm anxious in the next little bit to look at it and see where everybody's landed. I know you'll be, of course, have your fantasy baseball show, and we'll be talking fantasy baseball before long. And it'll be kind of interesting to see, where everybody's ended up.
Yeah, speaking of that, Dad, I actually wrote a fantasy baseball article today, went out on bellyupfantasysports.com about fantasy baseball draft strategies. You can find that on bellyupfantasysports.com, or it's also on my social media pages as well. We are right there into baseball season. The Brewers, my team, Dad, made some big signings today. Wade Miley, 36-year-old pitcher, coming back for his second stint with Milwaukee. And then they signed, traded for Bryce Wilson from the Pirates, who actually pitched in the World Series for the Braves in a big game. But since that game, he's done absolutely nothing. So the Brewers got him for cash. So big moves by Milwaukee, signing these arms for the bullpen. Oh, my goodness. We'll see how that all shakes down. And I'll give those thoughts more so as we get into baseball season and on the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com. And with that, Dad, we have a partnership with True Classic Tees. True Classic Tees there is available. You can find more information at TrueClassic.com. And when you get there to TrueClassic.com, you're going to find some great stuff. This brand, True Classic, makes T-shirts that actually fit, not to mention super soft. When you're not in the perfect shape, finding the right T-shirt can be incredibly frustrating. So most T-shirts are always either too tight in all the wrong places, or they're just too baggy and boxy as well. But not at True Classic. True Classic already has helped over 2 million men get their fit on at an affordable price. And the Sports Stove podcast listeners, they're going to get access to the absolute best deal True Classic has to offer. For a limited time, you can get 25% off your purchase at TrueClassic.com using the code BellyUpFantasy. Like I said, the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show is partnering with Belly Up Fantasy Sports. And so we're going to use that code BellyUpFantasy at TrueClassic.com, 25% off. That's an incredible deal. They've got T-shirts, polos, long sleeve shirts, all kinds of other things. They're branching out into other things there. So go visit TrueClassic.com, use the code BellyUpFantasy, and find out for yourself how True Classic can help you find the right fit in your shirts. All right, Dan, let's transition now to the NFL, and there is plenty of stuff to talk about in the NFL. We have playoff races coming down to this final week. We've got, just big things happening around with injuries and other things going on. But let's start off with the situation in Cincinnati, Dad, just down the road from you. The hit, it didn't look like a massive hit, but then causing a cardiac arrest. And watching this situation unfold and actually I was not watching the game. I was at a basketball game that night. We were driving home from the basketball game, and my wife said something that had popped up, and she started reading through the information. We got home and looked at it and watched what happened, and a really scary situation there. And to this point, still basically the reports are there is some improvement, but still obviously a long ways to go. When you have this kind of situation, let's start with on the field stuff. I mean, how can a player even come back a week later and play when they watch their teammate receive CPR right there on the field?
Well, that will be tough. I do think, depending on his situation, if he improves, and it looks like he's going to get better, then that's going to help there when they know more about his situation. Everything from what I understand is it was a normal football play. So as far as, them worrying about that, but as far as being concerned about a teammate, concerned about another, human being, no, it will have an effect. And as I've heard, talk about it, probably playing there in Cincinnati again might be really tough for a while because that's right where everything happened. But again, I think if he recovers and even gets to where he can encourage, his teammates, then that would be that would be different. But when you see something like that, again, we've gotten used, like people have said, we've gotten used to see injuries in football and serious injuries. A lot of times they're concussions or even paralyzations, things like that. But you don't have something that's life-threatening and something where CPR is being administered, and there's a concern whether he's even going to be able to get off of the field or not. So that's something that nobody's really used to or prepared for from that standpoint. So. I think it'll be in some ways it'll be hard for him to snap back, and in another way, they probably will. They'll probably think this is what he would want from there, and get ready to play again. I don't know.
I think you said it well. If they have a clear-cut answer right by this weekend, if they know he's fine by this weekend, that'll make it easier. But if they go into this weekend and he's still, on the ventilator, still, not active and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be really, really hard. And you look at the situation for Buffalo, they're in the playoffs no matter what. So even if they lose this week, yes, it can affect their seeding, which could be a problem. But at the end of the day, they can kind of coast through this week if they end up doing that. And if they lose, they're still in the playoffs, and it gives them a whole nother week for things to improve and things to get better. And maybe they're fine by the playoffs. I don't know if they don't have an answer, if there's not clarity in the situation by this weekend. I don't think Buffalo wins a football game until there's clarity. I don't think there is this rah around this guy if they don't have any clarity in what's going on, or if even the worst case scenario happens and he passes away. I don't think they're going to be able to just rally. I think it's going to be demoralizing, and I know football is so trivial compared to life, and I don't mean to make it sound any other way, but they are scheduled to play a football game this weekend, and they will be scheduled to play a football game the next week if they don't lock up the 1 seed. So they have a lot on the line for even their own emotional state. It's important how this game goes for them on Sunday. As well, and that's going to be an interesting thing to see how it does shake out. Then the call comes down to cancel the game, and now we're at the point where they can't make it up. I mean, if they do, it has to change the whole playoff schedule, And I just don't think they're going to do that. It sounds like, and I've not seen an official report in case I missed it, but it sounds like to me the idea is they just won't play it. It'll all be a win percentage situation and go from there. I'm checking real quick to see. I still don't see anything on that. So they probably don't play this game again, which is, again, just kind of throws everything a little bit off. And it's amazing to think about how one situation, and it's an incredibly serious situation, affects how the weekend's going to go for Kansas City, for Buffalo, and for Cincinnati. It was a big game in the playoff ramifications, and now it just erases. It just goes off the schedule, disappears, and will not count from everything I can see there as well. So I think that's the right call. I don't have a problem with that. Any thoughts on the cancellation of the game and any ideas to make it up, or do you think it's best they just move on?
Well, I think canceling game was definitely, the thing to do. And I think the coaches, I think everyone acted, correctly about that. And from what I've seen, a good thing for the NFL is they were prepared medically. They had a lot of people there quickly. They had the equipment there. That would not have been the case several years ago. So to move and to handle that, I mean, I've been around situations where there was, medical problems, and boy, you don't expect them. So you need people that can think quickly, and you need people that have the resources to be able to do that. And I think they were able to. But I think, definitely canceling the game at that point was the right thing. I agree with you. I think the best thing is to just not play the game and to, that mathematically they'll work out the playoffs. It's not going to be a perfect scenario either way.
Right.
If they do move everything back and they play this game and start the playoffs a week later, then that's maybe not totally fair either in a lot of ways. Everyone will get another week of rest, and be healthier going into the playoffs, except for Buffalo and Cincinnati.
Right.
Playing the Super Bowl without a week off, that maybe not be a bad thing. I remember when they did that last time, but everything is really set up for that. I would think, I think it could go either way because there are a lot of factors in it. If they do just cancel the game, not play it, and go with mathematics, there's a lot of things that can be affected by that. I mean, I haven't looked at everything, but, if anybody ends up tied and you get into a, conference record and all of a sudden, there wasn't this game, or, there a lot of things can change. But I think with what happened and the situation to where it is, I think the best thing is just to not play the game and try to move on from there. And hopefully we'll get good, good report about the young man, and that will help everyone all the way through the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's basically if you just don't play the game, you're only affecting 3 teams: Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati. And Kansas City's had some events happen in recent past with, remember, Coach Reed's son and the drunk driving and the killing a girl. And that was right before the Super Bowl, if I remember correct. And so I think they can understand how serious the situation is. I don't think they'd put up a fit about it either. And honestly, there would be some teams who say it's better off not to have that week off, the bye week, at least the number 1 seed, because then you're out of rhythm and all that kind of stuff. Who knows? There's a lot that could happen. We'll see how it shakes out from there. Transitioning to Philadelphia, Dad. Philadelphia has lost 2 straight games. Jalen Hurts has missed both of those games. Gardner Minshew has been the quarterback. So I put out a poll earlier this week asking for Eagles fans to tell me how they're feeling. Concerned that the momentum is lost, or confident that when Hurts returns, all will be back to normal. I did put a third option on the Twitter poll saying cautiously optimistic. So are you concerned, confident, or cautiously optimistic as an Eagles fan? Neither of us are Eagles fans, but put yourself in the situation of an Eagles fan. You had a great season. Your quarterback gets hurt. Gardner Minshew comes in. He loses 2 straight. Now you don't have any momentum. And you could lose the 1 seed, although that's almost all but locked up there in Philadelphia as well. So come down to it, Dad. What would you be? Concerned, confident that Hurts will return and everything will be fine, or cautiously optimistic, meaning you hope everything's fine?
I would be confident. I would think when Hurts comes back, everything will be back to normal. It's true they don't have momentum, but again, they haven't had him. And I think they're in a situation, and he does provide leadership. I think with him back, I think things could get back to normal very, very quickly, as long as he's back and playing, at 100% or close to it.
Eagles fans think differently than you, Dad. 46% are concerned with the momentum loss. 27% are confident, and 27% are cautiously optimistic. So the majority are a little worried about the Philadelphia Eagles as an Eagles fan. And I can understand that. Again, now if Hurts comes back, plays this week, and everything looks good, then probably everybody's fine. But even if Hurts plays and it doesn't look good, actually, I think Minshew is playing this week, isn't he? I feel like that was announced already, but I could be wrong on that as well. Anyways, a concern level is up in Philadelphia. They want to see things, how they shake out and everything like that. Of course, the playoff spots are almost all booked up, but not completely, of course. Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati, the Chargers, and the Ravens are all locked in. Jacksonville is currently in the 4 seed. If they lose to Tennessee, though, the Titans will take that. And New England currently in as the 7 seed, with Miami and Pittsburgh right there with the opportunity as well. So plenty on the line in the AFC. We'll look at these games in just a moment. In the NFC, 6 spots are locked up. Philadelphia, San Francisco, Minnesota, Tampa, Dallas, and the Giants are all in. Seattle currently holds the 7 seed. Green Bay, if they win against Detroit, are in. If Seattle loses and Detroit wins, Detroit is in. So 3 teams fighting for that last spot in the NFC, and basically 3 teams, and then plus the AFC South team fighting for the AFC spots. So let's look at these games that matter this week, Dad. Before we get to our pick 6 and pick games, actually, let's look at some games that matter. Kansas City plays the the Raiders. Kansas City needs to win to have that first number 1 seed possibility there as well. That one looks relatively simple. Jarrett Stidham is the quarterback for the Raiders. Although he looked really good in this first game, Kansas City should win that game. They're 9.5-point favorites at least, so they should win that game. Then Saturday night, Titans and Jaguars. We talked about this a little bit last week. It's been a long time since these 2 teams playing each other mattered. And now you got Joshua Dobbs, the Tennessee graduate, the rocket scientist. He is in at quarterback for the Titans, overtaking the rookie Malik Willis. And the Jaguars come in with their former number 1 overall draft pick, Trevor Lawrence, and Travis Etienne have been playing really good football. And now they're going to face up. We'll pick this game, so I don't want to get too much thought on it right now, Dad, but that game matters. So those 2 games on Saturday both matter. On Sunday's games, the Bills play the Patriots. Patriots have to win to get in. The Bills need to win to get the number 1 seed, so that game matters a ton. Vikings and Bears does not matter. Ravens and Bengals, it matters in the sense the Bengals could still possibly get the number 1 seed with losses by Buffalo and Kansas City. Let's see here. Jets and Dolphins matter because the Dolphins still have a chance to get in. The Jets could play spoiler. Let's see here. Steelers and Cleveland, always a fun matchup. An important game for Pittsburgh. They've got to win to have a chance to get in as well. Giants and Eagles will face off. Eagles are huge favorites in this game. Eagles need to win to secure that number 1 spot. They could still get it with a San Francisco loss, but they have a shot at the number 1 seed. It doesn't really matter to the Giants other than just being mean to the Eagles. 49ers play the Cardinals. Should be an easy game for San Francisco. Again, they could earn the number 1 seed in that game, but they'll play the same time as the Eagles, so they won't know until the games are done. Seattle plays the Rams. A win, and they can make it in, but again, they need the Packers to lose, and they close out the night. Green Bay, and the Lions. So best case scenario for the enjoyment of the game is Seattle loses, and then the Packers-Lions game means everything. Seattle wins, and the Lions are only playing to keep the Packers out of the playoffs. If we have a playoff with Seattle in it, Dad, I mean, what have we done to deserve that? I mean, right? We don't want to see Seattle in the playoffs. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
I
would agree with you on that.
Yeah. And the Giants, I'll tell you what, they're coming into this with talks of Daniel Jones getting an extension after this year, after they declined his 5th-year option last year. And now him and Saquon Barkley looking to get extensions. I looked at the stats, Dad. Daniel Jones, he didn't really have that great of a year. They just won football games. And so I was looking at his stats from last year to this year. I thought it's really not that much different, but they're winning games. I didn't put this in the pregame notes, so you haven't prepared for this. But Brian Daboll, coach of the year. I mean, you got Sirianni and Philadelphia. That makes sense. You could argue Peterson and Jacksonville makes sense, but Vikings to some degree possibly. But he's probably got no shot at that now. Brian Daboll he turned that team around at the end of the day, right?
He did. He really, you said that from the beginning. You thought that was a great hire. And, he's doing well. He really turned the Giants around, and they're in the playoffs, and, they're the 6th seed. So they've got a shot from there. So he's done great. Daniel Jones, I think a lot of times we talk about quarterbacks. The key is, don't lose the game. And I think that's what he's done. He has not been a problem. This year, is he somebody they can build on? Can they keep going with? I would think they'll probably think that, yes, that's the case. But we will see. The Giants have made a real good turnaround, no doubt about it.
I mean, I think you can argue for Daboll being coach of the year. I think you can argue for Shanahan in San Francisco going through different quarterbacks and still surviving and possibly with a chance to get the 1 seed. So I think you could argue that as well. And Dan Campbell in Detroit. I mean, they started off so bad, but then, man, they turned things around in Detroit as well. You got to think that name pops up there on the ballot as well for coach of the year. Who would you lean towards for coach of the year?
I would think the Philadelphia coach. I think where they've made the move, and I would think he would have the lead on that.
Yeah, probably so. All right, let's get into our pick sixes, Dad. Each week we pick 6 games. Usually we pick the 3 primetime games, Thursday, Sunday, and Monday. This year, and then 3 other games. This week we don't have a Thursday game. So we're going to pick the Saturday primetime game, the Sunday primetime game, and then we'll let you pick 4 games of your choice there as well to round it all out in the end. So let's start with the Thursday night game. I'm trying to get my stuff pulled up here. It's Jacksonville and Tennessee. Jacksonville 6.5-point favorites. Like I said, Joshua Dobbs is quarterbacking for the Titans this week, 2nd week in a row. And I love Joshua Dobbs, but I tell you what, Dad, I would have loved to have seen this number at 4.5. That would have made me happier. But I still think Jacksonville is the better team, and they're at home. They've got the better quarterback. So I'm going to go Jacksonville here with the 6.5 and take my shot with them. Which way do you lean in this game?
I mean, I agree. 6.5 is a little high for the pick, but I agree with you with Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville has come back. They're at home. Tennessee, again, 3rd different quarterback now. Jacksonville should be ready to play. I think Peterson will have them ready to play. This could be a great game. Trevor Lawrence has had a lot of great games. But again, both offensively and defensively, Jacksonville should be, with this being at home, they should be able to cover the spread and should be able to win this with everything on the line.
Yeah, sometimes you get worried about young quarterbacks in big situations, but obviously Trevor Lawrence has been there, done that at college multiple times. Joshua Dobbs, again, he's a great human being and a good quarterback. But of course, Tennessee rested a bunch of guys last week, hoping to have everybody healthy. Derrick Henry will have a week off. to come in and run over Jacksonville. Can Jacksonville contain Henry? If they can, they win this game, no problem. If they can't, then it's going to be a drag-out, knockout fight for sure. Then Sunday night, Dad, is the game that we care about. Green Bay and Detroit. Packers are at home. 4.5 points. And I'm surprised, honestly, this one was 4.5. I thought this one would be higher than it was. I'm not overly confident about this game for Green Bay, as badly as I want to think Green Bay is just a far better team. The way the defense has played recently, you'd like to think that's enough. Aaron Rodgers, I tell you what, Dad, I watch Aaron Rodgers. He's a great quarterback. He has great talent, but he makes some boneheaded plays every game. It's not interceptions, it's sacks. He'll take a sack on 2nd and 3 and make it 3rd and 15 instead of just throwing the ball away and having 3rd and 2. And he does that every single game. So stupid little things like that could have an impact on this game. If you don't get the kickoff return for the touchdown and the pick 6 from the defense, that's 14 points you take off the board from last week. And that's a little bit of an issue. So can they get defensive scores or special team scores? I'm not sure. I don't think you can count on those. Is Aaron Rodgers better than Jared Goff? Yes, he is. Are the running backs better than Detroit's running backs? Yes, even though Detroit's running backs are good. At the end of the day, the defense is better than Detroit's defense. So Green Bay should win this game. I'm picking them to win, and I'm picking them to cover. And they should, right? They should. The question is will they?
Yes, I think they'll cover, and I think being at home is going to make a big difference here. They came out really focused last week against Minnesota, and I think they'll be the same way against Detroit. The fact that Detroit beat them earlier in the year, I don't think it's a deal, to look past that. They've really worked at coming back and winning, the last, 4 games there to get to this spot. And I think they'll be ready to play. Detroit is not a bad team. They've played well. The defense is going to have to play good because Detroit can score points and they can get going. Campbell can get them fired up. But again, they're going to be on the road. They'll be in Green Bay. It should be a great atmosphere there for the Packers. And I think the Packers, if they can get up on them, could really roll in this one because, again, I don't know that Detroit's been in that, situation there. And, again, maybe it'll have a little bit to do with the Seattle game, from there also. But I think Green Bay, should win this. They should be ready to play. And, the weather's not going to be extremely cold as it could be in Green Bay. But, again, it's a dome team coming in. So I think Green Bay will win, and they should win.
See, me and you think differently on this. I think if Seattle loses, I think that benefits the Packers. I think if Seattle wins and Detroit has nothing to play for, I think that's when they're more dangerous. So I think I'd rather Seattle lose and let the Lions have a shot at the playoffs. And I think that's the better situation. I think if they come in mad that they can't make the playoffs, that's a bad place to be for the Packers because they're going to go out there and all they know is they want to ruin the Packers' night as opposed to make their night. And that's a dangerous team to face. So either way, the Packers should win this game, like I said, but will they is the question. We haven't talked about this with you yet, and it's a question that I've been running through my mind. This performance by Jair Alexander against Justin Jefferson last week, does it say more about Alexander or more about Jefferson? Because I think, like Alexander said, Jefferson's a top 3 receiver in the league. So I think it says more about Jair Alexander and his talent than it does knock Justin Jefferson. But which way do you lean on that question?
Yeah, I would think it's more with Jair Alexander. He is a premier cornerback. He has been. The defense has struggled some this year, and I don't know that that's really been, his fault. But I think, he is a really good corner. I think, he had, of course, a lot to do, probably the majority of what to do with Jefferson there. But the Packers committed to that. I think they decided we're not going to let Jefferson, beat us. Davin Clark may, Kirk Cousins, we're going to have to contain him. But again, the other receivers didn't really step up. But I think they made a commitment, to try to stop Jefferson. And part of the reason they were successful to do it is to have a cornerback like Jair Alexander. We've seen that with other teams. Teams that are successful against wide receivers, have a corner that can be, your shutdown corner. Jefferson may have gotten frustrated. Obviously, he did in some ways. Because, again, I think back at Devontae Adams, everybody knew he was going to get the ball. Everybody tried to stop him, but yet he still got his catches. He wasn't always the main one. But so I was surprised that Jefferson was shut out as much as he was. But I think the defense putting pressure on Kirk Cousins, as you know, I'm not a big Kirk Cousins fan, and I think if you could not let him stand there, and the Packers did that. They kept pressure on him, and that helped.
Well, that and you talk about Devontae Adams, he had Rodgers throwing to him. Jefferson has Kirk Cousins throwing to him. So there is a difference in that as well. But definitely an incredible matchup, and one we may see again in the playoffs, Green Bay and Minnesota possibly. So we'll see how all that one shakes out. Okay, Dad, 4 more games. I picked 3 underdogs in these next 4 games. I'm not sure which direction you went, so I'll let you go first. Game number 3 this week. This was a hard week to pick. The spreads were kind of all over the place, and so this was an interesting one for sure. So who did you go with game number 3?
Yeah, it was a hard one to pick, but I'll go with I went with the favorites on all of them but one. I'm only going to have one underdog, but this one would be the favorite, Kansas City over the Raiders with 3.5. I think they'll be ready to play, and so I'll think Kansas City will cover.
All right, that's at 7.5.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It is
Okay.
7.5. I still think Kansas City will cover that. I knew that. I just read that wrong there. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that's a little bit bigger. Yeah, 7.5 there for sure. Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't pick that game. I don't know. Las Vegas came out playing really weird last week. So that one I stayed away from. I went with a big underdog, Dad, in the New York Giants. They're 14.5 points to Philadelphia. And I don't think they're going to lose by 2 touchdowns. And they may lose the game, but it ain't going to be by 2 touchdowns. So I went with that one. I'm assuming there'll be people sitting again. There's not really any benefit to the Giants in this game, but still, I don't know. This one feels a lot closer than 14.5 to me. So I went with the Giants in this one plus 14.5. Who's the next one for? Do you have any thoughts on that game?
Well, I picked that one also, so we can say that's my second game, and I went with that's the underdog that I picked with the Giants. I don't think they'll lose by that much. Right. I think Philadelphia could win. I think Philadelphia probably will win, but I don't see 14.5. I think the Giants, it's a division game, and even though it's at Philadelphia, the Giants, if they want to, have a good shot in the playoffs, I think they'll be ready to play well here. So I just think that's too many points. So I picked the Giants also.
Yeah, and again, with it not mattering, they probably going to rest guys, and they won't have all their starters in, at least not all game. That kind of stuff would be my guess, but still, I just thought 14.5 was too much. For my 4th game of the week, the one favorite I picked in this group was the Indianapolis Colts, 2.5-point favorites over Houston. Even with Sam Ehlinger at quarterback, Houston's bad. They need that number 1 overall draft pick. So I'm going to go Indianapolis. I think they win that game, and I think they do it by more than 2.5 points.
Yeah, I didn't pick that game because I don't know. In some ways, I think Texas, Houston could win that, but will that really help them? So I don't know. Probably the same way with Indianapolis as far as their draft status is concerned too. Some ways that's a no-win situation for both teams, but I stayed away from that one. I don't know which way that'll go.
Yeah, I think Indy still ends up in a top 5 draft pick, maybe top 4 draft pick, even with a win. Top 5 draft pick, I think, even with a win. So I think Houston needs to lose more than Indianapolis needs to lose. Game number 5 for you.
It would be I would take Minnesota over Chicago.
Oh my goodness.
Again, you always hate to pick. I hate to pick either one of these, but Chicago is bad. Minnesota needs to rebound. Minnesota still has a chance as far as playoff seeding is concerned here, and so this game will make a little bit of difference for them. At 3.5, I went with Minnesota.
Yeah, and Chicago told us they don't want to win this game. They're sitting Justin Fields because he has a injured hip. So Chicago's taking their shot at the number 1 overall draft pick this week as well. I went with Arizona, Dad, and this was a hard one to pick, but 14.5 again. San Francisco could definitely beat the brakes off of the Cardinals. This is just one of those weird games that I don't think Arizona comes out and plays bad. It could be the last game for Cliff Kingsbury. My guess is they'll throw everything they got at Arizona just for the fun of it. So I'm going to go Arizona plus 14.5. That's just too big of a spread. So that's where I went with that game. Thoughts on that game, and then you can give us your last picks.
Well, I think I think San Francisco can cover that. I don't think Arizona's in a good spot, so I did not pick that game. The last one and this one, I really had to decide which way to go on it, but I'll take Miami over the Jets. I think the Jets but Miami really needs to win this, and Miami, I believe, is at home. So 1.5, and I'll take the Dolphins over the Jets.
Yeah, I didn't pick this game, but I'll take the Jets on that one. Skylar Thompson's probably your quarterback in Miami, and I don't know how that one fits out really well. Teddy Bridgewater, I think his hand is too injured. So the Jets, I think they'll come in and win that game. I was trying to decide between the Chargers and Broncos game when I decided just to completely avoid that game altogether. Chargers have failed me too many times, and Denver showed up last week. So I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Rams. They're plus 7.5 points, dogs to Seattle. Seattle needs the game to make the playoffs. I just don't think 7.5 is where it's going to be. I think it'll be a closer game than that. Seattle could win. I think the Rams could win this game too, because the Rams, they're not playing for draft position. They don't have any draft picks. So I'll go with the Rams plus 7.5 as my final pick. What are your thoughts on that Seattle Rams game?
Yeah, Baker Mayfield can show Seattle they should have picked him up, but we will see. Baker Mayfield does have a lot to play for, I think, to see where his future is going to be with the Rams. Seattle's been a very much of a surprise team this year, so I stayed away from that one because I don't know which way that might go. Seattle might come out and just play great and try to get that playoff spot and might get it. Or the Rams, they could, again, it's a division game, so you don't know. But that I stayed away from that one.
All right, let's look at the other games going on this week. Cincinnati and Baltimore doesn't really affect Baltimore at all. It does affect Cincinnati. Again, a potential opportunity for the number 1 seed. Still trying to figure out how they're going to figure out the Buffalo-Cincinnati situation. I didn't pick this game, Dad, because I thought 6.5. I don't know. That one kind of worried me. I thought maybe this game would be a little closer. I think Cincinnati wins the game, though. And yes, they're not going to know if they have nothing to play for or not. So they're going to have to win the game no matter what. So I think they do. I think Cincinnati wins. I'll pick them to cover, but honestly, that 6.5. I didn't want to pick them for my pick 6 because I'm not confident with that 6.5.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati will win. Again, they have a shot at the number 1 seed. And, of course, I'm sure before the games this week, the NFL will have announced what they're going to do with the Buffalo-Cincinnati game. So people will know, some way things are going to shake out from there. But, again, Baltimore's been a strange team. It looked like they were gone, and then all of a sudden they're back and, in the playoffs there. And so – you never know, but I guess really with the Lamar Jackson's a whole big issue there with them. So I would think Cincinnati will be fine.
The NFC South teams are playing each other. New Orleans at home, 3.5-point favorites over Carolina. And then Atlanta at home is 4.5 over Tampa. I'm assuming Tampa is going to be resting people as well. Again, because nothing really matters for Tampa right now. I'll take the home teams, New Orleans and Atlanta, in those 2 games. But at the end of the day, I don't want to watch either one of them. What are your thoughts on those two games?
Yeah, I would agree. Not a lot of excitement to watch any of those, especially New Orleans and Carolina. Tampa, I don't know. Again, they're in the playoffs, and if you're going to get ready to play next week, I don't know. Atlanta
health is too important for Tampa.
We'll see.
Tampa's their health is too important to them. They can't risk injury. They're not good enough to risk injury, so they're not going to play their starters. At least a lot of them. They're going to give them rest. But that doesn't mean Atlanta can beat them still. I'm surprised Atlanta's the favorite, honestly, in that game. That surprised me a little bit. Buffalo, New England, a huge game, an important game. And like I said, I don't know that I can pick this game until I know what's going on with the situation. Do we have any clarity? Is there any news that says, yep, he's going to be fine? Because we saw in the NHL, the same incident happened with Chris Pronger early in his career. And he survived and played many years afterwards because of the injury it is. If you do survive it, it's not like you have heart damage the rest of your life necessarily. You could possibly, I suppose. But when are we going to know? Are we going to know anything by this game? If we don't, I think Buffalo loses this game. If we do, I think Buffalo wins this game. So I don't know how to pick this game. What are your thoughts on Buffalo, New England?
Well, I think from football standpoint, Buffalo, needs to win this to be able to head into the playoffs and, to be ready to play. So it'll be interesting to see, how the coach handles it, what their psyche is. Of course, New England, this is for them to get into playoffs. So it's going to be a battle from there. So it'll be interesting to see if Buffalo is ready to play. If they are, then I think they can win it. Be interesting. If not, New England in the playoffs. That's interesting too.
It is. And what's crazy is if Buffalo loses, Kansas City and Cincinnati win, the second round matchup could very well be Buffalo at Cincinnati. So it's a pretty big deal. This game is important for many reasons for Buffalo. I'm just not sure how they can come out and play. Pittsburgh fighting for their playoff lives, 2.5-point favorites over Cleveland. I go Pittsburgh in this one. I've kind of been on the Steelers bandwagon here at the end of the season and think maybe they can sneak into the playoffs there. I don't know which one I'd rather see between them and New England. I don't think either of them are entertaining, but I'll go Pittsburgh in this game to give them a shot at the playoffs.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I think they need a lot of help, if I remember right. But I think that they have rallied and done well, and it'd be be good for them to win and have a shot at it. Again, this is quite the division rivalry, so Cleveland is not going to lay down by any stretch of the imagination. Right. And of course, Cleveland played spoiler last week and helped us out against Washington, so they'd be all ready to beat the Steelers. So, but it is in Pittsburgh, so it'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, I mean, they need Miami to lose, which is very possible, playing with their third string quarterback, and they need New England to lose. I think that's all they need, and they have to win, obviously, to get into the playoffs. I'm pretty sure that's all they need is Miami and I think so. Miami and New England to lose. Maybe I don't think they have the tiebreaker against Jacksonville, but either way, if they win, it wouldn't matter. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how that one shakes out. Chargers and Denver. Chargers on the road, 2.5-point favorites. Denver all of a sudden showed up last week. What is it? The coaching change? Was it really Nathaniel Hackett? Was he the problem in Denver? And is Denver going to win this week against the Chargers, who have nothing to play for?
Well, the Chargers are in the playoffs, but again, I think as far as momentum is concerned, I think it's important for them, to play well. I wouldn't think Denver is rallying at this point, so I don't know. And again, in some ways that game doesn't matter a whole lot, but I would think the Chargers should win, but you don't know.
Yeah, I'll go Denver in that one. Why not? They're at home, and like I said, they showed up last week, so maybe they show up again this week. They got a great defense, so maybe they pull out a win here to close out the year. Then Dallas and Washington. Oh, my goodness. That was crazy this week. I don't know if you saw or not, Dad. Ron Rivera in his press conference was asked about would he play Sam Howell if they get eliminated. and he didn't realize they could be eliminated last week, and they were eliminated last week. So Sam Howell does get the start in Washington. Dallas, again, I'm pretty sure they're locked into where they're going to be. So 5.5 point favorite Dallas. Which way do you go with this one? Sam Howell or the Cowboys?
I would think, the Cowboys will win this. If Philadelphia loses, would Cowboys still have a chance to win the division, or is that wrapped up?
I'm pretty sure it's wrapped up. I should be able to check on that for you. I was thinking that one was already done, though. Let's see here. Philadelphia. No, it's not done. You're right. There is still potential there because, the division is not clinched. So Philadelphia has to win or Dallas has to lose in order for Philadelphia to get the division. So super important game for sure.
Right. Yeah, that changes everything if Philadelphia is a wild card.
Yeah, right. No doubt. Dad, what about, did you see the new mascot introduced for the Commanders?
No, I did not see that.
All right. So they introduced Major Tutty. He's a pig, and a fun little thing there for Washington. And, good for them. They got a mascot now, so good for them. Congrats, Dad. You won the fantasy football championship that you and I were playing in together. I needed the Packers to go crazy on offense. They did not do that, and I was okay with it. I felt fine because the Packers won and won well. So at the end of the day, I can take my second place and live with it. But congrats, fantasy football champion. Is that your first ever champion? No, I'm just kidding. But Dad is fantasy football champion in our league this year. So congrats to you, Dad. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap up? We're getting close on time.
No, I think we're fine. Again, it'd be interesting to see how the whole thing ends up, what the NFL decides, to do with the Cincinnati Buffalo thing. And it'll be very interesting in the, games this weekend. Of course, very interested in the Packer game. We'll have a national champion in football before we get back next week. It'll be interesting to see exactly how that goes. And of course, our prayers and wishes for good health goes out to Mr. Holman, and I hope things go, that we get good news there. And, I think, this has made a lot of people think about things and what's important. And I think that's good. And I hope he comes out well and it'll help there.
Yeah, definitely. I want to remind everybody they can follow us on social media at Sports Stove on Twitter and Instagram. And also a reminder, starting in February the 5th, we'll kick off the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. You can find that right here on the Sports Stove YouTube channel or wherever you listen to the Sports Stove podcast. It'll be right in there with the Sports Stove podcast as well. Don't forget to visit trueclassic.com, and at your checkout, use promo code BELLYUPFANTASY for 25% off your purchase. And go to bellyupfantasysports.com to read my latest article on fantasy baseball draft strategies that was posted earlier today as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's edition of the Sports Stove podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.